Get your earballs ready. Welcome to the Greg and Tim Show podcast. Take time to sit back and relax and enjoy the show. Here are your hosts, Greg and Tim.
Welcome to the Greg and Tim Show.
Welcome.
We have a very special guest here in studio.
Yes.
Our special guest is a filmmaker, director, and producer who's actually right here from Winnipeg.
All the way from South Winnipeg.
He's most recently known for a documentary that was called AfterDeath, 2023, so last year. That's a documentary movie in which explores stories from people who have experienced near-death experience. And so I just read this the other day, but that documentary is on the top 5 in theater documentaries of all time.
So let's welcome him to the show before we get right into the show. How about that?
Welcome, Stephen Gray.
Stephen Gray, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
We're a little bit different than 100 Huntley Street, which we watched your interview on there.
Oh yeah.
And you've obviously done a ton of different interviews over the years, or over the last 10 months with your movie coming out.
Yeah.
The movie is, I'm gonna say it right now, fantastic. Like awesome. The sound effects, the visuals, like somebody like myself who loves like making stuff like that, unbelievable. So kudos to you on that movie.
Cool. Tim, you have a different opinion?
I thought it was just okay. I thought it was fantastic as well.
You thought it was good. Tim doesn't really appreciate the sound. Like the sound that you put into the movie was, I don't know, just a nerd like myself. I hear the sounds and I'm like, how did they make it? How did you do it? How did you design that kind of a sound, right?
Yeah.
Like, how long did it take to make the movie?
Yeah, so the feature length, we went into production right at the beginning of the pandemic. So it's about 3 years in production from the beginning to where it got released.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it took a fair bit of time to get it made. You went through COVID with the movie as well, right? I watched a little bit of the behind the scenes of that.
Yeah.
That was a little bit of a challenge.
Production was super challenging because, so, of course the world was shut down, flights were canceled everywhere and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we were jumping on planes when no one else was, with like 20 check bags, kind of a small skeleton crew. And we kind of out of necessity had to go to all these different people and interview them where they're at. Some of them are doctors, like cardiologists, neuroscientists. And they're in these hospitals, and the hospitals have to like release them to be able to be filmed, right?
Yeah.
And this is like, again, right in the beginning of the pandemic. Nobody knows what's going on. All we know is we're all gonna die. Like, as soon as anyone looks at each other, we're all gonna die, right? So like,
and then come back to life.
We're sitting on each other's doorsteps. One person's on a doorstep, the other person's on the driveway talking to each other.
The really strange thing is, all the people who had near-death experiences, like none of them were afraid at all. Like literally none of them were afraid because they're like, we've already died. Like
we know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, we like our time isn't now, and whenever it's our time, it's our time to go. But all the doctors are not. They're like, we've never had a near-death experience, researched it, don't want to have it.
Don't want it
during production.
I guess that's a good point. Like if you've been past the point of death, you're very limited about stuff that you're kind of scared about.
Yes, like death is not a thing to fear. For us, it is still.
Yeah. So did you get to talk to all the people that were in the movie? Like, did you get to talk to them one-on-one?
Yeah, so I interviewed all of them.
Okay.
Which was, it was like such an amazing experience.
Yeah.
That was the highlight for me, to be able to hear that.
My one question for them would have been, maybe you've asked this question, tell me if you asked this question to them. Is there anything that would stop you now from going skydiving, bungee jumping, or any kind of like death-defying things that people do?
Risks.
Yeah. Did you ask any of them about that?
Well, I didn't really have to, because most of them already did. Like, so for example, some of the people we included in the film died in really kind of dramatic ways, like a plane crash, car crash. A lady drowned in a kayak accident she was underwater without oxygen for about 30 minutes. And survived. And she, for example, all these people had basically like kind of like faced death like afterwards, or the way they died afterwards. So Mary, she had done this exact same kayaking route in the same river sometime after she had
Oh, yeah.
returned, and not just once. She's gone a few times now
And
since.
she wasn't afraid of
Not
it
afraid at
afterwards.
all. No. Which is crazy. And then Dale Black, the guy who died in the plane crash, he flew the same route 1 year on the anniversary after the crash.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a lot of people think that if you did something, you'd be afraid of it for the rest of
Totally.
your life, right?
I feel like I would be. Like,
You
yeah.
think so?
Without having their experience, like, yeah.
But maybe,
For
so
sure.
let's say you were in a plane crash and you were just unconscious.
Yeah.
Then maybe you'd have a different experience.
Maybe, yeah.
Whereas this person, like, literally flatlined, had
Yes.
no pulse, right?
Yes.
So it's a whole different experience for them.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the reason, and I've heard this before from you, but can you tell our audience the reason why you wanted to make this kind of experience and talk to these people and make it into a full-length movie?
Yeah, so it kind of all started back in 2012. My brother-in-law was actually killed in a car wreck. So he was 36 years old, and it's my wife's only sibling. I was really close to him, really close to my wife's family, more so than my own immediate family. And so it was really hard on all of us. For me, I started to kind of ask the question, like, where is he? Right? Like,
Yeah.
he's here one moment, gone the next, and there's no goodbye, there's no closure. I'm just told by police officers like he's gone, and I just I couldn't even really let that sink in, even for a long time after. So it was really hard to go through that. Now, I was raised though in a church, like growing up in a Christian home, going to church all my life, and so I was raised in a faith to believe that there is life after, there's heaven. The Bible talks about this. If we have faith in Jesus, we're going to see heaven. We're going to see reunion with our loved ones again. But in 2012, that faith was like really shattered, because it was like, are these just stories that we're telling ourselves, right? It's just kind of like false hope. And I never really kind of like learned to be a Christian, or like went through that discovery process myself, right?
Yeah.
I just kind of like rode that wave and coasted kind of during this whole time, and then I realized how shallow my faith was. So I was just like, yeah, like is when we die, is that it? Like, is it just our brains producing consciousness and all that? So I really wanted to know, honestly, is there something after or not?
Yep.
And where is he, right? Like, if he exists, where is he? So as I'm asking those questions and kind of going through that, that's when I came across these stories of people who've had these near-death experiences. Now, near-death experiences, the phenomenon has been around for a while, but in 2012, I hadn't heard of that yet. So this is a new term for me, a new concept. Never heard of it. And initially, the first couple of stories I heard, I was like very skeptical. I think because I was guarding myself, like I don't really know if I can really believe this. This is just someone telling a fantastical story that kind of gives people hope. It's just people, again, what people are kind of telling ourselves to feel better and all that. And as I started to like research it more and more and more, honestly, after I think it was like 30 books between my wife and I, we just kind of sat there, talking to each other, and just like, how can there be so many different stories? After reading them, they're very different stories, such different backgrounds, different situations, how they died, all of that, and they don't seem to know each other at all. They're from very different places.
Yeah.
It'd be really strange for them to all have like gotten together and formulated some kind of like conspiracy, like where they all have the same kind of narrative after they died in what they experienced. It was doubtful that was the case. But to kind of like prove that wasn't the case, I started reaching out to some of the authors, and that's when we kind of got the idea to tell the film. And honestly, that was also born out of I just wanted to watch this movie. Like, the movie that we ended up making is the one I wanted to see, and I wasn't finding anything like that out there, and so that was the tipping point.
I kind of like the fact that you kind of went in with a not like an open mind, like a skeptic.
Yeah.
One of the things I was thinking when I watched the movie, and it's a great movie, I really enjoyed it, is that are you going into it wanting to believe something's true,
Mhm.
and you have confirmation bias where you
Right.
really want it to be true, and therefore it becomes true.
Yeah.
Whereas when you went into it, you're like, well, let's see what they have to say.
Right.
I'm going to formulate my own opinion. So 2 questions for you. Number one is, you say you went into it because you wanted some kind of resolve or peace around your brother-in-law's death. Did you, after the movie is over, did you have some of that resolve? Did it kind of answer some of those questions? Secondly, after the movie, did you kind of resolve some of those inner feelings and thoughts and questions for yourself as well?
So to answer that, initially, like before we started production on the feature length, I'd already met all these people, you know, and got to know some of their family members, and even in some cases talked to the doctors and put all those pieces together. So I had already concluded long before we started production that it was like, no, for me, this is real. I had no doubt after all of the different people that I spoke to. It was just like, this isn't, it's too much to be a coincidence, like 5, 10, 15, but after multiple thousand different accounts, it just isn't seemingly possible. So I just kind of concluded for myself that this is real, and it gave me hope to kind of reaffirm my faith and kind of go back to that and believing in that again, which was helpful. But getting into production, it's unhelpful because because now we have to essentially reapply that lens, act like I don't remember any of this, and you know, we want to bring that audience through where I was back in 2012, leading up to say 2016, kind of that whole journey. We want to bring the audience on that journey. So
you have to kind of remove the confirmation bias, right?
Exactly,
because you've already got that confirmation.
Yeah, I already believe, but I'm not assuming the audience is going to believe. So what was helpful though is, so filmmaking is always a team sport.
Yeah.
And we had producers on the project. I mean, many people that were involved in the project that had varying levels of belief, disbelief. Some people that, you know, didn't come from the faith I grew up in. But the producers on the film, the 2 producers, Jens and Jason from Cypher Studios, they also both come from a faith, like a Christian faith, same as myself, but had 2 varying different opinions on near-death experiences. So one believe that there's a heaven securely, no issue with that, but was just like, there's no way people can have this experience. Like they're either all making it up, or there's something to that. There's just something to gain from it or whatever. And the other one wasn't sure. It was kind of like where I was, and was really skeptical on the idea of, are these just stories we're telling ourselves? And so we let that kind of like bleed into the skepticism. I let them have a very, you know, loud voice in when we were telling that helped shape it, so that I'm not like, you know, jumping in and being biased with it.
The one girl that had the 30-minute underwater drowned, dead for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
She, if I remember correctly, she actually went to heaven and was like reliving her life, right? Like, and she was being told of the people that she had touched that she didn't even know about.
Yeah.
Right? Like those kinds of things are hard to really make up. Like in my mind, I'm like, where's the skepticism on this, right? Like if you die and you're flatlined, you're no more activity, and you come back and these are the things that you remembered, right? Like, I don't know, in my mind, it's hard for me to be a skeptic, right?
There's different levels of skepticism removing, I guess, like in the film, and some bigger points. Like Mary is one, Mary Neal, who wrote To Heaven and Back. She's the kayaker who had drowned for a period of time. What's really common in near-death experiences is having what they call a life review, which is what you're talking about, where people when they die, they you know, they'll sometimes meet deceased relatives or an angel or sometimes Jesus. And they'll have what they call a full life review. So they see their whole life play out, not like like some photographs in a line or anything like that, but like in a 3-dimensional experiential way. Okay. So they see their life play out, and not just through their own POV of the perspective they had, but also through the perspective of other people around them. So from outside of themselves, they see their life play out. And the hurt and the pain that they might have caused someone or lifting someone up, they feel that and experience that from the perspective of the other person. And in some cases, they're shown the backstory of the lives of people who they interacted with, who might have caused them pain, to kind of give them perspective. So, for example, Mary, we didn't get this into the film because it's just too much to get into in terms of time. But she had actually gone through abuse when she was a small child. and she was shown the backstory of the person who abused her, including from the moment they were born up into the moment when that person caused harm to her. And it wasn't to like excuse or like that this is okay, but just perspective was helpful for her to make sense of it, because it didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So later when she came back, she actually went and talked to that person, which really threw them off, made it really, really uncomfortable. But they don't understand like how did Mary know that? How did Mary know this stuff that happened to them when they were a kid? The same thing happened to Howard, which we show a little bit in the film. Howard's father abused him when he was a kid, and he was shown his father physically abused him, and he was shown his father's whole life from the moment he was born, and just shown how basically the decisions that he had made brought him to a point where his expression of love was that, which is terrible.
Yeah.
And again, it didn't excuse it, but it gave perspective, and it helped Howard kind of process that, and then ultimately forgive his father, which made his family upset, because his family's like, he's the hated man in our family. How is it that you're best friends with them now? And he's just like, for him, it's like, well, grace was given to me, in the afterlife. When he passed away, he had a very tormenting, hellish experience initially, and then he was kind of pulled out of that and saved out of that.
Because he remembered the name Jesus while he was going through that experience, right?
Yeah. He was offered this memory of himself when he was a kid.
Yeah.
And it's right when these beings were like attacking him and ripping him to shreds, which by
the way, I get super squeamish when I watch like movies or even just describing like operations and all that kind of stuff. So there's some parts of the movie where if you get squeamish, you might get squeamish because it just, I don't know. There are some parts that were just a little bit graphic.
Yeah.
But you don't see it graphically.
They're descriptions.
But again, the sounds and the visuals give you that feeling. So anyway, sorry, totally off topic on that.
No, it's all good. Yeah. And that, I mean, the idea of, so Howard experiencing hell, I had very, specific ideas of what hell would be if it exists when I was growing up. I think probably a lot of people that went through church had that same kind of idea, right? It's like hell is like fire and brimstone or whatever, and there's like
first thing that came to mind.
There's like a devil with a pitchfork, whatever. But his description, it was something I hadn't heard before, which was you're in this place that's we kind of call the void, which is the absence of light. It's not just like absence of light, like a light bulb. It's dark and it's blacker than black. So it's the inverse of light, which he says we can experience here. It's not the same as going in a room and shutting off the lights. It's not the same as being blind. It's the inverse of light. So it's like it has a shape or it has a substance.
Okay.
But it's black, and it's the absence of joy. It's the absence of like hope. All the goodness that's here that we can experience here on earth is the inverse of that, because he would describe heaven and God as light and love and life, and it's death and hopelessness and decay and all that stuff in hell. So that place sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Right? 100%. Like who would want to be there?
Yeah.
Basically, by their definition, hell is the absence of God.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. The description of God in the Bible with hope and light and everything like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So before we get too much more into the movie here, because we kind of just dive in every
We always ask two questions, and we fail to ask both of them at the beginning. One was, how was your day? So I guess we don't.
You just dove right in. You went with the whole introduction that you forgot.
And so how was your day?
My day was great.
And the second question, which is a harder question, is who is Stephen Gray?
Oh, well.
So we don't want to know that you're the director of AfterDeath.
Sure.
We don't want to know anything about your professional life.
Okay.
Who are you,
Are you directing his answer?
No, because sometimes when you ask the question, you don't actually ask the question.
Well, the funny thing is like,
really, who are you as a person?
It's hard not to identify with like your profession or your career, though, right? It's really hard. Like I would always say that
rules here. You you cannot say
just say like I'm a filmmaker. That's simple, right? It's like a simple answer. I don't know. I mean, I'm a father. I'm a husband. And I love music.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What's your favorite band?
Oh, I can't choose one.
No?
No, and many
Could
different
choose
genres
two.
too.
If you had to go to a band
The-
right now,
Or 3.
in the middle of, like, you could, COVID just ended,
Yeah.
and this is your first time to go see a band, your favorite band that you can't miss live because you've never seen them live, who is it?
Oh no, I honestly couldn't choose. But if I had to just arbitrarily pick two off just that come to the top of my head right now, it'd be like the current flavors are very different. Brandon Lake and August Burns Red.
Brandon Lake is awesome. I don't know August Burns Red.
I don't either.
Some metal.
Okay.
Is it
that's,
metal?
That's
Yeah.
probably why I don't know.
Very opposite, man. We
Very
saw
opposite.
Brandon Lake in Minneapolis last year.
No way, really?
Yeah,
with
with
Phil
Phil
Wickham,
Wickham.
Oh, awesome! I just saw him.
Phil
in
Wickham's out with
Nashville.
us.
Right on.
No.
He's just
we say with, every time we say
where was I?
every time we say we saw Brandon Lake, we say with Phil Wickham as if he was like with us.
Do you just listen to music or do you play an instrument?
I played drums.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And do you sing?
Here and there, but
Okay.
mostly drums.
You sing and play the drums.
Yeah.
The drummer's usually in the background, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell Debbie.
You're gonna
need
get
more
him to play.
drummers.
We need more drummers.
Nice.
So what is something we don't know about you? I guess you play drums is something that most people wouldn't know about you.
Probably,
I
yeah.
would assume, yeah.
So we talked about earlier, Greg, as
Yep.
we were growing up. So, or talking about our growing up. So I grew up in Stonewall, which is a small town north of Winnipeg.
Yeah.
And my next door neighbor was Joey Danido, who is the drummer in Theory of a Dead Man, which
Yep.
became Theory. And I'm never gonna become anything like him. So
No?
it's like no, he's an amazing drummer,
Yeah.
like very successful, right? So it's like it was hard to be a drummer with your next door neighbor being the drummer from Theory, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're never gonna amount to anything.
It's funny. Joey actually was. I had my bachelor party in Las Vegas,
Oh yeah,
and my brother is good friends with Joey, and
Yeah.
then Joey just came and hung out with us
nice.
in Vegas for an evening, and
Right on.
I always just remember him as little Joey, though.
Oh, yeah.
you know, because I was 3 years older than him. I grew up with him, right?
Right. Yeah,
And now he's the drummer of a major band, really. Like Theory of a Dead Man's
totally.
and they rock hard though.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
They actually sing a really cool version of what is it? Hallelujah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 It's a really, really, really like more rock
Yeah.
version of it, right?
That's cool.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but
Did you get in like to filmmaking in school?
Kind of. Yeah. Yeah. So I had friends like being in the Interlake. It's like we had nothing better to do than like, what are you gonna? There's like nothing to do with your time, right? This is like pre-internet days and all that. And I had some friends that had like a VHS camera and all that, and they were the filmmakers. I wasn't. I was just lucky to kind of help here and there. And they would always want to do like comedy. And
you directed them.
well, no, that's funny. I couldn't be anywhere near them when we're actually filming because I have this problem of I'll always laugh, like, and I have the worst laugh, and it's super loud. And so anyway,
Wait till Tim. You gotta tell a joke then, so we can hear the laugh.
Yeah, keep going, keep talking. I'll think of one.
Okay. So yeah, we would, and they'd be the most ridiculous setups and all that, and I would just laugh about the idea before we were even beginning to film. A few times they had me be the cameraman or something like that, and I'm the worst cameraman in that situation. I can never do comedy. Yeah, the
'Cause
camera
you're
just goes
laughing.
down. It's super shaky, and they just had to ask me to leave all the time. So then, fast forward a bunch of years later. I mean, I just never thought I could actually do anything in that world. I was really big into music though, and I wasn't Joey Danido, but I was. You know, we had kind of small Western Canada tours and stuff in a metal band that I was in. And so I was, you know, like gonna make a go of that maybe. But then eventually I found myself going through Red River College, and I took a program at that time. It was an experimental program called Digital Multimedia Technology, I think, and they changed the name a few times since. But it was like you're gonna learn 3D development or 3D modeling as well as video production and web design. And I went there for web design because I was like, well, I was kind of playing around that, you know, evenings and weekends at home on my own like computer and stuff. And I figured I could probably get a job doing that, you know, and the goal is to get a job eventually.
Yeah.
So that's what I went to school for. That was like the idea. But when I got kind of like shown video production, I was like, oh my goodness, this is a whole world I don't know anything about. And I learned Final Cut, which was like an early version of the software. And
you
once,
lost your sense of humor.
Yeah, it was all gone. Yeah. Well, I realized like I can shake and laugh all I want, but I can cut something.
Yeah.
I can finally do comedy again. So and so Final Cut was just like, wow, the ability to edit something was like, this is the ability to kind of put together all of the, you know, music and design and even the stuff I was doing on web. I can kind of put this all together in one medium. And so I was like hooked on filmmaking, but still didn't get a job in it. Got a job at a web agency doing web stuff for a while before I got into filmmaking.
I read, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when you were doing film, you at one time were doing weddings. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long did you do that for? And can you tell us a humorous story of a wedding you did?
Yeah, well, so we did Winnipeg Jets weddings. We did
Like the players?
yeah.
Okay.
Mark. No, I'm trying to remember his last name.
Mark Stewart?
Yes.
Okay.
We did his wedding.
He's the coach of the Edmonton Oilers, and they're going to the Stanley Cup Finals right now.
It's awesome.
Well, not the head coach, but he's the defensive coach. Yeah.
So the funny thing is, I'm not the sports guy on our in the film team, but all the rest of the guys were, and they were so mad that I wasn't like I didn't know the names, and like everyone was there, Bufflin was there, and I'm like, oh, it's cool. I don't, you know.
A friend of mine told me that. So he's been working for a hockey team, and he told me because he doesn't like hockey.
Yeah.
But he's there, like, he's organizing all the promotions and all the marketing, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But he actually said because he doesn't like hockey, he does a better job. Because he doesn't care about what's going on around him. He cares about the job at hand.
Yeah.
You're not,
right?
You're not starstruck.
Right.
So you're like,
starstruck.
Yeah. So you're just like, my job is to film this wedding.
Yeah.
Who cares if Dustin Bufflin's out back fishing?
Totally. They were great people though, and that, you know, that was always that's the reason why I was doing it anyway. But so one crazy story though was, it's not so much funny, but we were in Calgary filming a client that we had to sign a non-disclosure agreement to even be able to meet them. So which is right away an indicator of like, okay, it's got to be someone that's like, you know, we would have otherwise no business being around probably.
Yeah.
And we still weren't giving her the names up until the wedding was the day of the wedding. And we got their names. It was like, I don't know. I mean, it's not anyone I know, but but the location was blacked out on Google Maps.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, well, we're going to the middle of nowhere, like in Alberta.
A black site.
Yeah, it seems to be a very, and we got our phones got like taken away at the gate as soon as we go in. So it was like, okay, obviously this got to be a pretty big deal. So we're filming the wedding, and these people seem to be, you know, well-to-do, and the wedding planner comes over us and was like, you know, you guys have to keep it down a little bit. The talent's just downstairs and sleeping right now, and I'm like, great. I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, so later on during the reception, there's this whole tent that's made, but it's like, honestly, like it's not like a tent like fabric, or like the temporary tents. It's like this is a real tent. It's a permanent structure, but it's built to be not permanent, right? Like it's just for fun for the weekend kind of thing. But it's like, anyway, it's very extravagant. There's this whole wall where they're going to be having the head table. And we're told, I think it's like 15 minutes before that begins, they're like, hey, make sure you have your cameras ready because that wall is going to disappear. There's going to be a big surprise and big unveiling of like who the talent is. It's going to be like playing during the reception here, the first dance. I'm like, great. They're like, and anyway, it's a pretty big deal. And, you know, there was some issue, but like, make sure, you know, this has to be captured. This anyway, everyone was all freaking out and was like, well, who can this be? And the wedding planner seemed to be very on edge. Like, so we're all kind of taking bets. We're like, is this Sarah McLachlan or something like that? Anyway, the curtain goes down and it's Elton John. And now you can't hold me forever. Didn't sign up with you. And
no way.
Yeah, that weekend though was it was the weekend where he otherwise would have been opening up for the Olympics. I think it was like 2 days prior was the Olympics in the UK.
Okay.
And he skipped that for this wedding because they paid more.
To
give you the idea of like the kind of people who were. Anyway, it was a private concert with about 120 people, Elton John, and I'm just hanging out with him.
And since you signed the NDA, we can't find out who these people were.
You can't find out who the people were.
But if you click the link, no, just kidding. You can see the whole video. No? So you did the edit and everything for their wedding,
exactly, and just because it was
and
like
they've turned over all the footage.
Yes, all the footage. But we got to like film and edit together our little private Elton John concerts for fun.
Okay, so you got
Yeah.
to keep the concert
Yeah, yeah.
footage.
Yeah.
But you had to turn over. Did they make you turn over all the footage, like everything?
No.
No, so you
No.
still have all the footage,
So-
But you just can't show it.
Yeah, I can't show it.
or else you'll-
So after the recording, just
Yeah,
for
yeah.
us.
we'll just play it at the end as our outro. We'll play the Elton John concert.
Well, you can play it, then we can have our own near-death experience legally. I don't know.
Oh man. So I want to jump into a segment that we call This or That.
Okay.
Because the reason why I want to do it in the middle, we usually do it at the end, but we've been testing doing it in the middle. It kind of gets us to know you a little bit more. We're getting to know you fairly well so far because, didn't know that you were in a metal band. That's pretty awesome.
Uh-huh.
The fact that you grew up down the street from me is, well, we didn't even talk about that during the show here. So you grew up down the street from me and we probably crossed paths multiple times.
Did you guys go to school together?
No, he would have been the year after I graduated. He would have joined high school, so
okay.
he was
Just miss each other.
just
Right.
missed each other. But
Yeah.
he would have grown up with my brother, so
Right. I
Yeah.
thought like you went to the same school, but one of you wasn't cool or something.
that would have been me.
Yeah.
So this or that. Do you want to explain it?
okay, so it's
Are you going to
basically
explain it
this or
properly
that.
this time?
Okay.
No, you pick one or the other.
Okay.
So
You-
essentially, when you pick one, though, the other one disappears for the rest of your life.
Okay.
Okay.
Pretty high
and you-
stakes.
Yeah, very high
And you
stakes.
have to
Okay.
choose one.
And it's
of them.
very realistic.
Yeah, you can't
Okay.
pass. If you want to explain something,
hmm
you may explain something, but
Okay.
otherwise it's rapid fire.
Okay.
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 And I always have a couple questions before I go into this or that because they're my favorite questions. One of them is if you could hang out with one person, dead or alive, and have a 20-minute conversation, who would that be?
Jesus.
Jesus is not allowed. We had a chaplain on 2 weeks ago, and we did not allow Jesus.
Really?
Yeah, so we had the chaplain of the Bombers and the Jets
Yeah.
on, and he had the same answer.
Yeah.
But we explained to him that Jesus is always with you.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you
You have to pick
can't
somebody else.
choose that
Right.
'cause he's always with you. And he went on to choose two very good examples. He went
Oh,
to
yeah?
two
Oh,
things,
my goodness.
but you only have to choose.
You only have to choose one person.
And these are the pre
alive.
questions.
It could be alive.
Alive or
Alive or dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably Spielberg.
okay.
That would be a very good one.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Steven, I assume.
Steven
Okay.
Spielberg. Yeah.
All right.
No, look at the other one, the unknown one.
Frank Spielberg.
Your legitimate brother.
Well, there's other Spielbergs, I assume. And then the second pre-question is your top 3 places in Manitoba to bring your wife on a date.
Ooh. Top 3 would be what is this? What's the name of the place at Cinnamon Park?
The Leaf?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The Leaf.
The Leaf. Yeah.
And
Which I've never been.
no.
I have also never been.
Neither of us have been.
Okay.
It's
It's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's very nice.
A
The
friend
Leaf
of ours
is
just
beautiful.
bought season tickets to it.
Yeah, no, it's good to do in winter. It's great for Winnipeggers. It's
apparently-
freezing cold in the winter, right?
Yeah.
And it's basically like a tropical paradise inside.
Apparently, in the season ticket means if you go at least 3 times a month, it pays for it.
Oh yeah, it's not. I mean, yeah, it's like $15 or $20 something to get in. So
Yeah.
it's not too bad. Yeah,
That's not too bad.
yeah,
I've never been, but
nice.
so that's one place.
Yeah.
yeah. There's a restaurant in Hecla, the Lighthouse, I think it's called.
Yep.
Yeah, really nice.
That's the one right by the lighthouse.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know what he's talking about. I've been there.
It's called the Lighthouse.
It's called the lighthouse, and there's a lighthouse.
Yeah, right by there.
It's like a fake
Yeah, yeah.
lighthouse right
Yeah.
beside
That
it.
was confusing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And number 3.
Your must do for like your wife's like we want to go
Yeah.
out to something tonight.
Probably Hermanos.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which is great.
I think that's the first time we've heard that one.
Oh yeah,
I like her. We've been to her. Have you been?
I haven't been.
I've been. It's very
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good answers.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Answers.
Are you ready for
It's as
this,
if there was wrong answers.
this or that?
As best as I can be.
Okay. Is that a yes or no?
Yes.
No, not ready.
We'll begin. Apple or Android?
Apple.
Right.
Man, I would expect that you're a filmmaker. Beach or Europe?
Europe.
Pizza or pasta?
Pizza.
Slurpee on a cold day or coffee on a hot day?
Coffee on a hot day.
Okay.
Ooh.
Doing your work early in the morning or late at night?
Late at night.
Late at night. Road trip in a vehicle, driving or flying to your destination?
Flying.
Chocolate or chips?
Chocolate.
Going for a run or a long bike ride?
Long bike ride.
Parade or fireworks?
Fireworks.
Fancy dinner out or Uber Eats and Netflix in your sweatpants?
Fancy dinner out.
Uh,
I do too much of the other.
Three possible options. You got to pick one of them. Rom-com, sci-fi, or action flick?
Sci-fi.
Favorite sci-fi?
Of all time. I mean, Jurassic Park, I guess. It's a bit of a sci-fi, right?
So on the sci-fi question, it's not on here.
Yeah.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Trek.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Old Next Generation or the
Next Generation was my go-to.
okay. I'm Captain Kirk.
He's
Oh,
younger
yeah.
than you.
Yeah, we won't get into that. Board games or video games?
Video games, unfortunately.
Okay. And your favorite video game is what?
Always
Probably Red Dead Redemption.
I've never played it.
Play that? Okay.
I play sports video games.
I
Nice.
play no video games. Live concert or live sporting event?
Live concert, no question.
And New York or Miami?
Miami.
This is Manitoba, not Manitoba, but it's,
Either or would be
okay,
better than
all
New
right.
York.
You don't like New York?
I just
Okay.
No.
Have you been to Miami? I guess you probably been to Miami, I would
In
assume.
Florida.
If
Yeah.
you've chosen it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't like New York. That's fair.
I don't like Miami myself.
I like Miami.
I don't like Miami because it's unreal to park anywhere and you have to drive everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas in New York, you can just go one place and then you can like subway
The
it to
traffic
everywhere.
Right,
is
that's true.
horrible, but other than that, Miami
Yeah.
for sure. Showers or baths?
Showers.
Showers, right?
That's a weird question. You want to give backstory on that question?
This is not my list. just gave it to
You made that list. You made that question.
You gave the list. to me.
Tim takes baths only.
Oh yeah?
I gave him a challenge in January that he couldn't take one bath. He had to shower every single
You
day.
hated it or what?
I like my baths.
Yeah. You have a soaker tub or
Yeah, sit there like a
Nice.
king. Lather,
Great.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Be a lead singer in a band or be the greatest rapper battler ever.
Rap battler.
I don't even know that term.
lead singer in a band.
Okay. Watching a premiere of your own movie or giving an interview about your movie.
Being at the premiere or
Watching the premiere.
watching the premiere.
Watching the premiere
Yeah.
or giving an interview.
Giving an interview, no question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is that?
It's just strange to sit back and watch your own film in front of other people.
I
It's
am
a cool
not
experience, but doing it a few times is hard.
I totally get you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was this or that.
Should we play the music?
Yeah.
We don't have any music still. So we still don't have any music.
All right.
So we were getting to know you a little bit more intimately, obviously, with some of these answers here. I love the answer of Apple because Tim's an Android guy.
Oh yeah.
Shower because Tim's a bath guy. You guys are like opposites.
I didn't grow up in Stonewall.
You didn't grow up in Stonewall.
Literal opposite.
He had friends that played with him.
He was in a death metal band.
Yeah, and you were in a worship band.
I was in an a cappella band.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
All vocal.
All
on.
vocal.
Totally the
What were you guys
It is
called
the
again?
opposite.
What were you guys called again?
Sweet Harmony.
Sweet Harmony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I was watching the movie, and I wanted to ask you a question about the people that had the choice to come back
Right.
versus the people that didn't have a choice to come back. Because there's the one guy, and he's in one of your trailers where he says, "Put me back."
Mm.
Put me back. I don't belong here.
So when these guys are explaining that they had a choice or they didn't have a choice, why do you think they had a choice, and why do you think they didn't have a choice?
I don't know. I mean, that would be total speculation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's what I want. I want speculation.
Yeah, I don't know why some people are given that choice and others aren't. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a great mystery that we'll maybe one day know.
Yeah.
Hard to say, but it is interesting though that some were given the choice. So Howard talking about Howard Storm, who wrote My Descent into Death. He had the hellish experience and then eventually like a heaven experience.
Yeah.
He kind of got in the outskirts of heaven. He wasn't really actually brought into it, but he was kind of shown from the outside, kind of a glimpse of heaven, sort of overview of it. Then he had his whole life review, and then he was told it's just time to go back.
Yeah.
He fought it because he's like, for him, he's like, I've met the one person I've been waiting for my whole life, like my only, dearest friend.
Yeah.
The only one who cares about me and knows me like more than I know myself, and he just didn't want to lose that.
Yeah.
Right. And so Jesus is talking to him and basically says, I'm going to be with you, so you got to go back.
Yeah.
And his whole thing was like, he had a mission. He was told there's a reason why he needs to go back.
Yeah.
Not everyone is kind of given that. There's some people who have a near-death experience that we didn't include in the film that they just kind of like, they have this glimpse or they see something like an angel or relative. They may have a life review and then it just snaps and they're just awake in their hospital bed or wherever they wake up. So it's all different. It's not all the same, but the stories that we include in the film, some are they're given a choice and some aren't. I don't know why.
So like time construct is obviously different.
Well, yeah,
right?
that's the craziest part, is because everyone who had a near-death experience, it doesn't matter again the glimpse or like how in depth. Mary's was like really in depth. For example, they all talk about, we're sitting in the interview chair, or like I'm about to conduct the interview.
Yeah.
And I asked the question. We get into like, well, how did you die and everything, and walk me through that. When we get to the point where they had a physical death, they're like, they all say there's a couple things, caveats. Like one, everything that I'm about to say was not going to do it justice.
Yeah.
However I'm going to try and describe this, there's no language that I'm aware of on earth that can do it justice or even gets close.
Yeah.
But I'll try. And then the second thing they say typically is that everything that experience that I'm about to talk about didn't happen the way that I'm describing it. It's non-linear. It's all at once. So Mary, she drowns, and then she's comforted by Jesus. Comes down, like basically pulls her out of the kayak and is like holding her in the air, essentially. Like she's above her body. She's seeing this whole lot, her body eventually leaving the boat and going downstream. She's seeing her friends frantically trying to like find her body, do a body rescue, all while she's seeing this pathway and a glimpse into heaven. And she goes in towards heaven. Looking back, she sees her body. All this is happening at the same time. She's seeing her body, she's seeing that whole thing happen over there.
Like
she's
a 360 camera.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a 360 vision, and not just 360, but also like I'm fully there, but I'm also fully over here.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make sense to me.
No, our minds can't comprehend.
Yeah,
that.
and not just that, like, okay, then this pathway happened, and then now I'm in heaven, and I'm having this conversation, and I'm having a full life review, and yet I'm seeing my body. But all of that happened at once.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make any sense to me. But this is how people say the experience was. It was completely different than how we experience our experiences here on Earth, and it was more real than this life here on Earth. Many people come back and they describe it was like, oh, that was reality. That's the thing we've been longing for and waiting for. That is like, okay, now that's real. And then when they wake up, they're like waking to a dream state. Essentially, it's like this life feels like a dream state compared to this hyper reality of consciousness there.
One of the things that I really like about the movie is that there's one gentleman here that was a skeptic and saying, I don't really care about what someone's experience is after they come back, what they say, that because you can't really prove that.
Yeah.
You can't. But what he said was when they were describing things they shouldn't have seen.
Yeah.
When they weren't conscious,
Right.
and they were seeing things about the operation, what the doctors were saying,
the medical charts,
charts and things like that.
Yeah.
That he was saying, well, this is kind of concrete proof to me that they were actually alive and they weren't technically dead. Maybe talk a little bit about that as far as proving to the skeptic that this was for real.
So Dr. Michael Sabin, he's a cardiologist who we kind of heavily feature in the film because he was the skeptic view, essentially. He kind of takes us on that journey of skepticism. What convinced him as a cardiologist that this stuff is real? He does make clear distinctions, though, that there's no proof that there's the afterlife. There's just basically compounding evidence. And he talks about it as like the way of science is that we're, things that can be repeated, right? Like can be observed and repeated. Like eventually you're making a case for something, right? So if you have 4,000 recorded counts when people clinically die, and of those accounts, let's just say, I'm just saying for argument's sake, this isn't actual data, but let's say 18% of that group report seeing things that happen in the operating room or at the accident scene that can later be corroborated. It is a high number. I just can't bring it up what it is right now.
For sure.
So those are evidential cases for there being an existence afterwards, because it's hard to articulate, like, how would the brain be able to figure out all of the details. Now, we do have an amazing imagination. The brain is this wondrous kind of organ that does these crazy things. Also can fill in gaps, and trauma can do certain things, and PTSD can do certain things to the brain and all that. However, we have certain cases that we kind of highlight and double click into in the film. One is Pam Reynolds, who we get into. She underwent a experimental surgery where it's like she has a brain aneurysm in the lower part of her brainstem, and basically to operate and try and get her to survive it, they're gonna have to kill her temporarily. So they're doing this operation where they cool her body down to a temperature that makes her heart stop. At that point, they're basically removing the blood flow. I think it's from like neck up. Now, it's for sure her whole head. It may have been more of her body. The details are outlined in Dr. Sabin's book, but in the film, we kind of highlight that it was her head, neck up, that was without blood. The reason why that happens is basically like there's the artery is like a balloon, and it could explode at any time. So I know how dangerous it is because my grandma died of a brain aneurysm. So it can happen just like this, and it's disastrous. I mean, the person's gone right away. So it was like there's all the reason to do the risky thing because she's going to die anyway. So to get all the blood flow out, that deflates this whole situation, and then they can do the surgery. But to do the surgery, the neurosurgeon was basically entering into what they call is neurosurgeons no man's land. They don't really know like how successful it'll be, how much damage. They don't really know much about that part of the brain. So the lower part of the brain stem is like, it's just not a lot known about it yet. So they perform the surgery, it's successful, but during the surgery, when her brain is completely offline, I'm talking functionally not able to not even work her systems.
It's at zero. And it's being recorded during the operation. There's these clicks in your ears that are going back and forth with this high-pitched volume, whatever, which is basically determining that there's no brain activity. They can't proceed if there's any brain activity. Obviously, it's very dangerous. So it had to be offline. And so they're watching the charts during this whole operation. It's an hour and 20 minutes that she's clinically offline. They shock her twice to bring her back online. The next morning, one of the neurosurgeons is doing the post-op care after the tubes have been removed and she's starting to begin to speak. He's asking some basic questions, what is your name and where are we and all that kind of stuff. And then she starts to talking about the things that she saw during what she was basically near death experience, including things that happened in the operating room. They were very specific. So she was asking questions like, why did you move from one artery to the other in my leg? I noticed there was some confusion in the operating room and you moved from one artery to the other. And it was due to a cannulated artery. She didn't know any of the clinical reasons, but you guys were arguing and there's this thing going on. I found the music that you were playing in the operating room really insensitive. You were playing Hotel California, and I don't want to be stuck here forever. Like, this, what's going on? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And she talks about the tools and the description of the tools. She's like, it was reminding me of my dad's socket wrench set. And so the neurosurgeon is kind of freaked out. He's thinking,
of course, I would be too. Yeah,
like he's thinking, the only way that this makes sense is that she was online. Her brain was working, right? So he goes back to check. He's like, because we could be facing medical malpractice here, right? And they check, and it's flatlined. It's confirmed flatline. So when she's physically offline, her brain is not able to produce any new memories, never mind function of her body.
It's not like she's just under, like she's not just under anesthesia.
She wasn't under that, but it was all the other things too, right?
Yeah.
So her heart had stopped on purpose during this time. And again, there's no blood in her head. So there's the material aspect of like how her brain works is not able to function at all. None of it.
So it takes away some of those arguments that you could be hallucinatory.
Yes.
Or if you could be just, your subconscious could be taking over because there's nothing there. It's at zero. It's a flat line. Nothing to obscure those things.
Yeah. So she, you know, she has this other aspect of near-death experience. She sees an angel. She's brought up towards heaven. She has a whole life review, all of that kind of stuff. But then she's told not her time. She has to go back, and she's kind of begrudgingly brought back to the operating room, re-enters her body, and that's the second time when they shocked her, and then they were able to get her stabilized. So, but it's Dr. Sabin talks about it's the stuff that she says in the operating room that we can go back and verify, corroborate. Yeah. And all of that stuff can be corroborated. And that's kind of like one of the cases that is just kind of like, what do you make of it?
Yeah.
It's hard to...
It makes you question or think about things, even if you're not a believer, even if you are a skeptic, right?
Yeah. Just that there's any spiritual reality at all, that our consciousness is maybe not produced by the brain, that it might be elsewhere.
There's another part.
Yeah.
Question, going back to the question I asked you before, I'm not sure if you actually answered it, but did you, after the movie, did you gain some of that peace? And I know is your wife involved with the production at all? Okay.
She was there for the beginning of it when we captured Captain Dale Black's story in a short for Discovering Heaven. She was actually there with me in the interview chair and all that.
So you kind of she experiences some of these things too. So in that your brother-in-law passed away and her brother passed away.
Yeah.
Did you get some kind of closure? Did it give you some kind of peace after you completed the project?
Yeah, and again, I think a lot of that just happened just being across from the person during the interview.
Okay.
Because they're just talking about things that at the point when they died, they're talking about what the experience was, right? And so some of them described from immediate, like a car wreck or a plane crash, being above their body, feeling totally at peace, not feeling any pain at all. And some of them were initially confused. Dale talks about, like he had to, that's me. What am I doing down there? I'm up here though, right? And then it was this realization, that's not me. That's my body, and that would be similar to like a jacket that I wear that I might identify as like, people know me from wearing this coat, but it's not me.
Yeah.
I'm not that coat. So he would say the body is like the same. It's this flesh thing that we kind of currently inhibit. And
our flesh suit.
Yeah,
essentially, right? Kind of like I think that's what is that how Pastor Leon, I think, used to call it, or Pastor Zach might say it. It's like this is our flesh suit. This isn't us.
Right.
Like,
yeah. That's kind of like how they were describing what they were seeing, right? Dale was like, clearly that's me. It's not moving. It's but I'm up here, so I feel great.
Yeah.
And so the things that they were talking about, what they initially experienced, we couldn't help but just kind of go like, is that what maybe Marco experienced, right? And so it was really helpful for us to go through that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. And like that's why I asked that choice thing, right? Because we feel bad that we lose our loved ones, when, especially in a tragic accident like that. Like, we had a friend that passed away in a tragic accident as well. And the reason why I asked the choice question is because maybe the choice was to keep going. You know what I mean? As opposed to coming back and being here.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the choice that they had made because, just the feelings, or they had that ability to choose, right?
Well, I couldn't help but think of with that whole thing, because we went through that too with Marco. It's like, if he was given the choice, why he wouldn't he have come back? Like, we needed him here.
Yeah.
But Don Piper, who's in the film, wrote the book 90 Minutes in Heaven. He talks about how it's like he had 3 kids here. He had a wife, like a loving family, beautiful family, and he just wanted to be there. Like, and he was like, that's our ultimate reality. That's where we belong. And it's like, when you get there, it's like your whole life now makes sense, because that's like God is there. It's like all this full reconciliation for any kind of like problems here on earth is all worked out there. And so this is like where he belongs. And now he's brought back to earth. And for him, even though he has this loving family around him, he loves them. And it's not any less. Yeah. It's just that's the reality. And still, this is like a dreamlike reality here. And he'll live it, but he's longing to go home. Yeah. And so that kind of helped me think about, again, the processing. If he was given that question, who wouldn't want to be in perfection, right?
Yeah,
who wouldn't want that?
So we Well, I actually read a review of the movie that wasn't too favorable of it, right?
There's a few of them out there, yeah.
And there is,
Yeah.
and most of them come from a certain side,
Right.
right? They come from people who either didn't grow up in a church, or don't go to church right now, aren't Christians,
Yeah.
don't have a belief of an after life, essentially, right? So if you are that kind of a person and you see the movie, you see all of these people make these very similar descriptions of what
Mhm.
they've gone through.
Yeah.
What is there anything that you can think of that would make you still believe that way? And obviously you're not the right person to ask this question, but I'm just trying to pick your brain on it because it baffles me.
Are you
to read.
are you saying if you're somebody who's on the other side who thinks it's all phooey, and you watch the movie, are you more likely to change your mind because of the movie?
Yeah, do you think your movie has changed more minds?
Well-
Or do you think that people that are stuck in that mindset are forever stuck in that mindset until they actually have an experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I can only go by experience of some conversations that I've had with people who've watched the film, and either were agnostic or atheist before watching it, so they don't come from even a different religion or anything spiritual. There's been some conversations with people that have moved. The pendulum has moved for them so much so that they're kind of willing to accept that there's some spiritual reality. They may not be like, oh, I'm going to read the Bible today and accept Jesus.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty big change. That's in my opinion, a pretty massive change.
Yeah.
And it's because of certain accounts, like we talked about Pam Reynolds, and so many of these different accounts of near-death experiences that kind of like, it'd be hard to ignore. And it's hard to say at a certain point with all the evidence that this is just coincidence or it's a conspiracy or whatever, right? Like it's just that many doctors, that many verified accounts. The other thing that was kind of tipping the scales, I guess, to people, the Pam Reynolds was a big case, but the other one was people who are blind from birth have also had near-death experiences. And there was a study that was done, I think it was 27 accounts, and 14 of them were blind from births, which means at that point, they don't know what color is. They don't know what what visuals are. They don't have visual dreams, which I didn't know, and before making the film, and they don't know what light is or darkness is. So all of that stuff, they're told what color is and shape and things like that, but they can't wrap. Their brain doesn't make that up because it doesn't have working retinas for information that way. So it's not been exercised. They have in their near-death experience, obviously a vision is part of it, and they're usually alarmed at first, but then they talk about all the mundane details of seeing. So there's this girl that we talk about in the film that she drowned in a lake, and she's rising above her body, which she doesn't, she's unaware of what's really going on first, but she notices like telephone wires, which she's just enamored with. Like, what are these wires? What are these poles? And then she sees a bird and she's following it, and she's seeing all the feathers and the details around the bird and the eyes. And then she sees this commotion and a bunch of kind of people huddled around a certain area on a beach, which is, later she finds out was her body, and they were trying to resuscitate her. She ends up re-entering after she's told it's not her time. But she's talking about all these, visual kind of details, and she's so fixated on it. And we wouldn't be, because it's just like, that's not a big deal. Telephone wires.
Kind of funny what we take for granted.
Yeah, it's just like whatever, like light, like what do you mean?
Yeah.
But it's alarming to them, and they're talking about visual descriptions, and when they come back, their vision still doesn't work. So it's like, what?
Yeah,
how is it that they
unreal,
were able to see for a moment, right? Only in death.
That's crazy. I had a question. One of the points that I found interesting in the movie was that they were suggesting that more people than just the people in the movie have had near-death experiences, but a lot of people don't come forward with them because people won't believe them.
Yeah.
They'll laugh at them. They'll think they're just crazy. They didn't really happen, or they doubt the experience in general, right? The people that you talk to that have gone on to write books, and not all their experience have been positive in their family life too. I think one gentleman who had a near-death experience said his wife had to leave him because he was so fixated on these. So it's not all positive and roses afterwards. But did you get this the feeling that the people that kind of ran with it, And did you think that they were happy that and fulfilled that they did kind of go with it and experience it and explore it and share their story to the world?
Like in terms of writing the book and all that, or
all those things.
some people that ended up writing their book, like Mary was one of them. That was part of her, basically like her objective or her goals or whatever of what she was told to do when she came back. So it was to do these certain things, forgive these people, do that, but then also to tell her story. So the best way she knew was to write a book. She's never written a book before. Most of these people are not authors before writing their stories. And yeah, they just felt compelled to do that. Now, Don talks about, he wrote 90 Minutes in Heaven. He talks about he wrote the book so that he wouldn't have to talk about it anymore.
Oh, okay.
Because
so it's kind of like his cathartic. Like,
yeah, it was like because he kept getting asked all the questions of what he saw, and he's like, "Okay, I'm going to write it so it's one and done." And I don't have to talk more.
So just buy the book.
Unfortunately, it made it 10 times worse, right? It's like
because
more
they want
people
to ask
aware,
more.
and more people. I mean, I'm no different. I want to know more, right? Like, I read the book and I have him, in the chair, and I want to know more.
It's the same as your movie, right? You make the movie try as something to help yourself,
exactly,
and now you have to answer all the questions that come from the movie, right?
And then you have to make AfterDeath too.
Yeah, I mean, we would love to. Yeah,
there's got to be
so many other stories
to put into AfterDeath too, right?
Well, we talked about the production team and myself talked about AfterDeath. It kind of like I guess it kind of opens the door to the conversation. We have a lot of evidential cases, but most of them happen in North America. Not all of them. We include other countries too, but most of them are North America. We know of these near-death experiences all around the world, and we know there's so much overlap. What would it look like if we went to all these other countries, China and India and all these other places, and actually investigate in the same way we did in North America over there, and what would that look like?
That was one of my favorite parts of the movie, in that you said, well, let's just go away from this Judeo-Christian society because to see if the experiences are the same.
Yeah.
And I thought that was one of the, like for me, one of the more interesting points of the movie.
Yeah.
Could you tell us how you got involved with Angel Studios and how in the world you got in over 2,000 screens?
Yeah, because that we know how tough it's been for like movies like Sound of Freedom, Journey to Bethlehem just recently as well, to get in on all those screens.
Yeah, it's a whole journey. So we had a finished film before we went to Angel Studios. Angel Studios ended up being our distribution company. Angel Studios had not yet at that time when we ended up going with them released any movie into movie theaters direct. So we signed up with them and we could see the level of excitement that they had both for the project, even though we can talk about how it gets selected and all that. They don't select it and just throw it into theaters. But the team at Angel Studios, there was an excitement around the film, and there was a huge excitement about this new thing that they were trying to do, which was going to go direct to theaters, which is like, it's a whole disruption. It's like a Taylor Swift kind of moment where they're going to do like interrupt things and go direct. At that time, they were a small independent studio, but the team, I mean, there's just so much excitement not to get like excited about. We got us excited, right? So we just kind of we got excited about their passion and then signed on with them. And then they're like, well, we're gonna see how the next little bit goes. We have 2 movies before we release AfterDeath, and we'll just see. So one is it was called His Only Son, which is like a small independent narrative film about, I think, the story of Abraham. That released in theaters, and I can't remember how many theaters it was initially, but it made a big splash. I think it was like 12 million or something in the US box.
Okay.
Which, again, for a small little like independent film was massive. And that was like, okay, I think we made a good decision with these guys. Great. Sound of Freedom then comes out.
Yeah.
And of course that just like blows up. Yeah. Right. And I mean, not even Angel Studios really could have predicted the level of success that film had. It was just like the right time.
It was grassroots too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
there was a lot of grassroots. And that's what's interesting about Angel Studios is they take a very innovative approach with marketing a film.
Right.
They don't just take a bunch of money and then just chuck it at a bunch of ads, like same as basically any other distribution company would. I
was watching, sorry to interrupt you for a second, but I was watching somebody who talked about Angel Studios and how their philosophy is very similar to like a Christian philosophy where, well, obviously it is Christian philosophy, where it's being funded by the people that want to see it.
Yeah.
Like church.
Yeah.
Right? Like you go to church and you tithe, you go to these movies and you're you're paying it forward,
right?
Type of thing, right?
Well, that's so what makes them really different, and what allowed our film to kind of like be greenlit to go with them as a distribution is because we're excited about them, they're excited about us.
Yeah.
But it still had to go through what they called the guild, which was again very new, I think, at that time. It was in development. But basically it's like a big pool of people. I think when we started with them, maybe it was 100,000 or 150,000 people. And it's basically like crowdsourced a yes or no on this film.
Yeah.
So the film goes through that process. People watch it, and then they go like, "I would be super disappointed if this didn't go into theater," or "You know what, the movie sucks. I wouldn't be that interested in watching it anyway." And they just kind of go yes or no on the film, whether they would buy a ticket and watch it in the theaters. And then any comments they can just leave as well. So, and we had like massive interest in this film. I think it's because it's a universal topic. You know, it's who isn't asking that question, what happens after we die? And it lit up the crowd. And they were able to like statistically show, okay, we have this huge percentage of people that get lit up about this topic in this film. That let them be comfortable about releasing it in the theaters, knowing there's that hunger for people are going to turn up and watch it in the theaters. So they're not just blindly, again, chucking cash at ads or whatever. They know that there's this base of people that are excited about it, and they're going to tell 10 of their friends. And so sure enough, there's going to be that same kind of audience out there that's going to be interested in this film. I can't remember what the stats are, but I want to say they had something like 3,000 films or something in a year that get thrown through their system.
Oh, wow.
And then they only release like 3 or 4 a year. So
that's crazy.
That get greenlit.
And then at the end of the film, you come on the screen.
Right.
And you talk about paying it forward.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's a great way. Like, you love this movie. You should let other people also enjoy this movie.
Totally.
We did the same thing with when we watched Sound of Freedom.
Yeah.
QR code, we took a picture of it, we bought the tickets, and then that allowed other people to go and see the movie. And it also kept it in theaters.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? Because it keeps it front of mind. When it stays in theaters, it stays front of mind.
Yeah.
Especially on a topic like what Sound of Freedom was as well.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So
that's kind of the grassroots, like word of mouth kind of thing, right? Which is, it's fun. There wasn't really any other movies doing this. Now, since they've done a few with Angel Studios, other companies are paying attention and they're trying to interject. I don't know if they've done QR codes yet, but there's some post credit kind of stuff and all that.
Did you like doing that, coming on at the end of the movie?
I mean, it was a little bit. No, I mean, I like being behind the camera.
You gotta be honest.
It was the one time you had to be.
Yeah, it was strange.
I have to do what?
Yeah. But I would say like this topic though, because it's very personal. Like, it was a journey for me, and so I I was comfortable enough to.
With all the growth of these Angel Studios movies, I don't remember a time in my lifetime where there was so many Christian or certain based movies that did so well, that were so well done, and the interest level so high that I've seen it as in the last couple of years. It seems like just talking to some guests that we've had recently, it seems to me that there's a segment of the population coming back to their roots, whether that's Christian, whether it's where they came from. It just seems like people are turning, maybe since COVID ended, to a different direction. Do you have any opinions of that? Do you agree, disagree with that sentiment?
I think there's a few things happening all at the same time, because I would agree with you that, and especially during the pandemic, it caused it's people become existential, right? And we're losing people, and even the whole lockdown situation, all that, getting lonely, and it kind of causes us to reflect. Forces us to reflect, right? And so I think people are coming out of that. A lot of people are turning back to faith or becoming spiritual, and they never were before. All that kind of stuff, which was helpful for the film's release. And it's all just God's timing. It had nothing to do with us. We get finished when we get finished. Angel Studios was there when it was. But there's just kind of this interesting thing of I don't know exactly why it's happening, but there's just a bunch of different filmmakers making really exceptionally good quality films kind of all at the same time. And I mean, there's some people that know each other, but they're not all like really close friends and helping each other out. They're separated as well, right? There's Lionsgate, who has Kingdom Story Company, Andrew and his brother there. They run that, and they're doing such amazing work. Like Jesus Revolution came out the same year as ours. Ordinary Angels as well, which is like a faith adjacent kind of film. Really uplifting stories. I think there's also this thing of Angel Studios talks about this a lot, where people I think are generally kind of like tired of the nihilistic kind of POV or worldview in film.
Yeah.
I like some of that. I mean, like
Yeah.
especially like in sci-fi films, there's some of that kind of interjected in that, which
A Marvel movie every now and again.
yeah,
fun.
sure, yeah, exactly, yeah. But I think just kind of like if we're only being fed that exclusively, it's just kind of like it gets tiresome.
Yeah.
I think there's something helpful about having these like hope-filled films, and they're just the ones that are like really good quality. At the end of the day, I personally don't really want to buy a movie ticket unless it's like a compelling story,
Right.
and it looks entertaining and well done, right? Like that's kind of like the baseline, right? And there seems to be more films that are done that way, which is exciting.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
you say well done. One thing I noticed in your film is it's very it's got a lot of cuts, a lot of fast, and then a little bit of like it'll slow down for, and then it'll go fast again.
Right.
You get the interjection of the commentary and everything from the people. Is that a style that you already had, or like when you're doing like creativity before,
Right.
is that a style that you already had, or is it something that you brought to this film because it was how you wanted to tell the story?
I think it was unique to this story, just because there was a lot of finding it in post too, in terms of like how is this, the arc going to go? How are we going to keep audiences engaged and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
Because there's repetitive elements to this, right? We're telling
You're
multiple
seeing the same-
stories,
yeah.
and they're all saying we died, and I mean this is how we died, right? It's
Spoiler
like,
alert! They
yeah.
come back to life.
Yeah, totally. They're still here. So there's like these things that we already kind of know baked in as an audience.
Yeah.
So to keep it fresh and interesting, we kind of like painted an arc of thematic kind of stuff. So we're bringing you from the beginning of like maybe you don't believe in anything.
Yeah.
Kind of towards the throughout. It's like if God is real, what is that like? If heaven is real, what is that like? If hell is real, what is that like?
Mhm.
And all at the same time throughout is like what's actually materially happening here, scientifically speaking. What's
Yeah.
happening in the brain? What's happening in the heart? And so we're just kind of like that's the through line is like these sort of like moments and themes. And in the end, it's kind of like this bigger kind of like mosaic of themes and the takeaways kind of as big as life, right? So
And I think the generation that's coming up right now is coming up with these very like jump cutty, like very visually
TikTok style.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's very visual
Yeah.
stimulation, right?
Mhm.
And I think it allows your movie or your film to be shown in a TikTok style as well, right? Like
Right.
you can show that story in a TikTok clip, and it's going to grab somebody's attention to want more,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that's why I really liked it, because it was like, oh, like you can't stop, because it feels like you're going to miss something if you don't watch the whole thing at once, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Hopefully it wasn't too much, but
No, the squeamish parts got me. Even when you were talking just a few minutes ago, when you were talking about stuff, I don't know.
what's
Sometimes
so
I just stopped listening for a second
Yeah,
because
I'm squeamish too, and I can only not be squeamish when I'm the person like talking about
explaining it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but if somebody else does,
same.
I'm like, ugh, I
my
can't.
family, well, not my family, my wife's family loves when we're having dinner, after we're done dinner,
about surgery.
and I have a nice full stomach, they love to tell a nice squeamish story about somebody who's just gone through surgery, or somebody who's just gone through this.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, and they know it too, because they look at me and I turn white,
Oh yeah.
and I stop listening. I'll
Yeah.
even plug. I can only hear it on my left ear, so I'll like plug my ear, and and they laugh at it. But it is what it is. Maybe I need a stronger
He
stomach.
really likes stories after or someone sharing his food during.
No
Yeah.
sharing of food. Stop the food talk. We don't need to talk about sharing food.
So, what are you working on now?
So my next feature doc that I'm currently developing is called Doom Scroll, which is going to be basically looking at the tidal wave impact of screen addiction. And
Basically what we just talked about for a second.
yeah, totally, the TikTok
Yeah.
generation, right? So yeah, Jonathan Haidt, he wrote this book, the Anxious Generation, which a lot of the film kind of like follows that book and Jonathan's work. But yeah, it's kind of all the unknowns of what has actually happened to our brains.
Yeah.
Especially the Generation Z is basically like the first generation in history to have gone through this whole experiment of living their entire life, including going through puberty online, and what has happened to them.
That sounds awesome. Like that's coming. What are you looking at a time frame right now?
So, I mean, we're rushing through it. going as fast as we can. We don't want it to be as long as it took for the AfterDeath.
Yeah.
And our hope is that this film also goes in theaters, only because it's kind of a unique experience in a place that where you can remove your phones, put them down, and we're kind of communally experiencing this together. It's kind of tailored to that experience. So our hope is that it goes theatrically for initially and then maybe streaming afterwards.
So are you looking, sorry to interrupt you for 1 second before I forget. Are you working with similar studios, or is this going to be something that's more along the lines of like not in the Angel Studios?
So it'll be the same team that made AfterDeath.
Okay.
But it's independent. Angel Studios may be our distributor, or it could go through somewhere else.
So dependent who picks you up type of thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
So it's either
very
Angel
cool.
Studios or the Greg and Tim Show.
I don't know if we have a budget yet for that.
We're working on it.
I don't even have a budget for you.
No, it's zero.
No, but that does sound like super interesting, because like I have kids, you have kids.
Yep.
Tim has no longer kids. You're
18, 19, and 20.
Okay.
They're,
Yeah.
all,
Yep.
they're no longer adolescents.
Yeah.
Last month was the
But
was
his
the end of
kids,
that.
Wow.
Sniff.
his
Yeah.
kids would have grown up completely with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
ours have as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Like basically, since they've been able to have a phone, social media, TikTok has been around, right?
Yeah.
So that's very interesting.
And it's
I'm
kind of
looking
like,
forward to that.
can we have a healthy relationship with tech, because it's not going away,
Yeah.
Right.
and you can't really live without it, right? It's not.
We always say at our church, it's like it's great and it sucks.
Yeah.
Depends how you use it, right?
Yes.
Depends
So-
on the tool. It's a tool.
If it's being used as a tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a hammer is used to build a house, but you can also use it for bad
Weapon.
things, right?
Yeah.
A gun, we talked about gun rights and everything. You know, guns are great for hunting,
Yeah.
but they have bad things that they can do as well, right? So
Yeah.
everything has a bad thing.
Yeah. Do you see yourself now as a documentary filmmaker?
That's a good question. I guess like I feel like I'm uniquely positioned to probably create docs, but AfterDeath was kind of half narrative and half documentary, right? We did a lot of narrative reenactments. And so I would love to kind of explore the narrative world as well in the future,
Mhm.
and not only do docs, but currently that's
Just not comedies.
maybe not comedies.
Why
'cause
not?
I would laugh too much.
What's man, there's somebody that just did a really like serious movie that was normally doing comedies. Oh man.
Ben Stiller had made the transition away from comedies into doing, I think it was an Apple TV Plus show he had just done. And he said, I think he said the reason was it was Zoolander 2 went out, and it said it ruined him because it tanked. And then he says, "Oh my goodness, I don't know what's funny anymore."
Yeah.
Right.
And then he's like, "Guess I'll do narrative."
Yes, I'm done. It's over.
Just move on. to
Turns out
something
he's
else.
like an amazing director with his narrative work too. So it's
Was
crazy.
it Todd Phillips?
Oh
did,
yeah, the Joker.
Yeah. So he did The Hangover.
Yeah, that's
Right
right.
now
It's a huge
Joker
switch.
1 and Joker
Yeah.
2, right?
You know what? Comedies are probably way harder. I think they're harder than narrative.
You think so?
Yeah, if you can master comedy, you can do anything.
I saw the preview for the Joker 2 and it looks unreal.
Yeah.
Like the it's going to be a musical almost, right?
yeah.
There's going to be a lot of musical elements to it. So he's gone from comedy to like Joker, which wasn't comedy. It was like I guess what would you call it?
Psycho thriller.
Psychological movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
To like now a psychological musical, which is nuts, right? And
is nuts.
and The Hangover was awesome. I
Yeah.
loved The Hangover.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil the movie, so if you want to cut this out after I ask this question, feel free. Okay.
Sure.
At one part of the movie, they ask the guy. One of the guys asks, "What is the meaning of life?" Right, and the question or the answer was, "Love the one you are with."
Mm-hmm.
And you'll change the world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you heard that from him in the movie, is that something that changed your perception of life?
Well, there's a lot about Howard's story that like really kind of rocked my world. One of which being just that, having experienced hell and then being given a second chance after death. That's not what I was raised to believe, right? That you can get a second chance after. But he was kind of in that in-between state, not quite final death, process of death, whatever that was. That was one thing that kind of rocked my world. But also, so Howard is told, like, just love the people you're with.
Yeah.
And he was just like, yeah, but well, what else? What else? And he was just like, no, that's going to change everything. He realized, and we didn't get into too much depth in the film, but having talked to him, he said what he found was loving the people you're with can be the hardest thing on earth. He says because for him, his wife ended up leaving him and then took the kids, which is obviously a very painful experience because he was a zealot. Like he was so fixated on like, hell is real, heaven is real, like you need to get saved. Because this is literally what he experienced. Like, how could you not take that seriously, right?
Yeah.
If you experience that, like, you're going to take that very seriously. But of course, they didn't. So for them, it's like he's just come back crazy, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he's brain damaged or something like that. So he says later, how do you love someone who doesn't love you back? It's easy to love someone who gives that love back. But how do you give it to someone who doesn't? How do you give it to someone who hates you?
Yeah.
How do you and then he even said like he's had some troubling kind of family experiences as well, like in his own family outside of with his kids and his wife. And he said sometimes love is incarcerating someone. Like love isn't like it's not a word or just a feeling. It's like love it's an expression as well, right? Like seeing someone that's going through a troubling time in their life, maybe incarceration for that person is like the course correction that they need. That's the loving thing to do.
Yeah.
So love can look different for different people depending on the situation. So but anyway, he just found that it was like a lifelong thing that is like really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like because he asked what the meaning was and that's what he was given, it's almost as if it was like a test for him.
Right.
Like something when he came back, like this is going to test you, this is going to test your faith,
and
this is going to test
this
your
be the hardest
belief
thing for you.
in
Yeah.
And like our church has an acronym called LAUGH, and it's called love, accept, forgive. Right. And those three things in life, they say that if we can be those three things in life, we will make the people around us happier. We will make the people around us more comfortable.
Right.
That type of thing. Right. So like when I hear that, love the one you are with, I think about that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not just like, I'm with Tim or I'm with my wife or I'm with my kids. It's when I'm, just at the mall and somebody's shopping with me or that type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Showing them the love that they might not even see at home.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of people don't get it at home either.
Exactly.
So it kind of hit me, so that's why I wanted to ask that question.
Yeah. Well, and then even knowing his story too, like in the church that he is with, which is like it's in a small town just outside of outside of Cincinnati. He's working with people that are like downtown, usually don't have a family, or either on the street or sometimes even with prostitutes too. Like he kind of helps with people like rehabilitate them, and these are people that most of society just doesn't want to go anywhere near. Right? They don't want to. They might donate some money or something like that, but they physically don't want to get involved with any of these people to actually tangibly help them. And he just is those hands and feet kind of like to help, right? Like he's cooking meals or like, it's like counseling or all those kind of things that are challenging for other people. It challenged me because I came back from that. I was like, oh my goodness, like I don't do that.
Yeah.
And like he's obviously so transformed that he comes from this callous kind of like hardened atheist kind of like figure with a crusty exterior to like changing his whole life around, giving up everything, taking a 90% pay cut to becoming a pastor at a church. That's a big change.
What I found interesting about Howard's, he was, for me, the most interesting example because he followed his passions, as you say, and everything didn't turn out perfect.
Right.
He lost his entire family.
Yeah.
And I just thought, we were always thinking if you do the right thing, if you go down the right road, that everything is going to be hunky dory, and it is not always. And I have no answers to that, but I just found that interesting.
Well, and that's I think it's like that's reality, right? Like life can be like unfair sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Even in our lives here, it's like there wasn't justice in like what happened with my brother-in-law, right? But we may not ever see justice here. Some people don't ever like see justice from a horrible situation they've been through. And it's hard to go through that, and it's just like how can life be like this? How can it be unfair? Why do bad things happen to good people, like I'm seeing with my wife's family? But that's just kind of that's life, right? Like rain shine, it falls on the just and the unjust, and just the world we live in.
Yeah, for sure. So I've got one last question for you.
All right.
And I have one last question after your last.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
Is there a really important question that we wanted to ask? Remember?
I'm blanking.
We're having this debate.
Okay.
Over the last
Oh, you want to debate that?
Is
episode?
It's and recently I have
this one's the casual
I have
question before the serious question.
I have developed facial hair. Okay. This is a recent activity.
It's brand new.
This is new.
New thing.
This is exciting.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying life.
New development.
So the thing that's on my face, that's on your face, that's on Greg's face.
Yeah.
Is it A, mustache and a beard, or is it B, a beard?
It's a beard.
You are like for everybody.
I haven't got one person to agree with me. Not one.
So I explained this likeness to Tim and I was explaining to him again the other day, and I still don't think he gets it.
I get it.
Do I have a nose and a face, or just a face?
No,
right? Once you put the nose on the face, it becomes a face.
Yeah.
If you put a mustache on a beard, it becomes a complete beard.
My point is, two things can be true at the same time.
So you're
this
saying
can be both a beard
you could
and
shave your
separately. It can be separate.
You could shave your mustache and still would be considered a beard. It's just right. And then you could have no beard and just have the mustache. So that's where you're.
Yeah, that's two things can be true. That's just my opinion. But he's right. Nobody agrees with me.
Nobody. Not one person.
Okay, you may go on.
So sorry, Tim.
I think he should shave it into just a mustache, though.
Oh, yeah.
What are your thoughts?
No, it won't happen.
I think that would look good.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Gotta try it, Tim.
Or the guy from Anonymous, you know how he has then detach it here?
Yes.
Right? You would look at that way
My
too.
wife is fully supportive of my beard and mustache combination. However, she would not be supportive of just a mustache.
No way.
Oh, man. Well, the last question I have for you, and this question is tailored to each guest a little bit differently because each person brings a little bit of something different to the world. If I was a new filmmaker coming into the world today, somebody who's out there grinding with the wedding photography and videos, or doing car commercials or anything like that, what one piece of advice would you give them knowing what you know now?
I think it's find your community, or find other filmmakers who are maybe further ahead than yourself, or more seasoned. Could be even outside of the exact field you're in. For example, if you're a director, finding producers. If you're a producer, finding director. All that kind of stuff. And just ask them questions and try and learn from them. There's so many people out there that are far more experienced that do have a lot to give. And it doesn't hurt reaching out. I mean, that's what I did with Cypher Studios, and they were a lot further ahead than I was. And we had nothing except to gain from getting in touch with them. So that's my advice.
That's awesome.
That's where you're going to meet Spielberg.
Yeah, maybe.
You'll get there. I think you're probably, right now, you're going to get Doom Scroll done. You're 4 years away.
Oh, yeah?
4 years away from meeting Spielberg.
Nice.
No, 4.
Okay, it's 4.
No, because in 5 years he'll be working with him.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll meet him making Hook 2.
Well, let's aim for like a little bit higher than Hook 2. But if you are looking for an AfterDeath 2, a suggestion, and most of my suggestions are just taken and thrown in the garbage, but one of my suggestions is I would love to hear the stories of the people that watched your movie and went from atheist or agnostic to Christian and went into the belief system that something does happen to you. And I think that would be a very cool experience to find out what they think.
It's also compelling, I think, Greg, is because I've heard from some people who've had near-death experiences in other countries, let's say like in a Muslim country in Syria, who've had near-death experience, saw Jesus, and then came back, it's so difficult for them to talk about it because A, they might be killed for it, or B, at the very least, their family will leave them. They'll have no community, and they're not allowed to like be in their home anymore.
Yeah.
So they got to leave everything for coming forward and talking about what they experienced.
Yeah.
And it totally doesn't jive with the religion that they were brought up in. I think there's something really interesting with that as well.
Yeah. It's a big jar that you can open up and you can get snakes flying out of everywhere on that one, right?
Totally.
Yeah. No, that's really cool too. I think that would be... I'm looking forward to the next one. So if you haven't watched it yet, it's linked below. It's called After Death. It's a fantastic movie. You can purchase it on Prime, Apple TV Plus. Am I missing anywhere else?
Google Play.
Google Play as well. Each place you can watch it there. You can rent it. You can purchase it. And it's a fantastic movie. I know that me and Tim both enjoyed it. And if you haven't subscribed yet... Tim would like you to do a couple things. What would you like them to do, Tim?
Subscribe, share. Sharing is caring.
Yeah. There's a QR code right here.
Above my head?
Right, yeah,
head?
above both of our heads.
Yeah.
That QR code is the donation.
Pay it forward.
We don't have a donation code, Tim.
Let's get on that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Subscribe, share, comment, like. The comments are what we love to see, whether they're negative, positive. I'm sure that when Steven's watching this as well, if there's comments about it, maybe he'll take some of those suggestions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Anyway, Steven, thank you for joining us. We
Thanks
really
for your time.
appreciate this.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. See you later.
Thanks for watching the Greg and Tim Show podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with all your friends. Sharing is caring.